Hi, thanks for stopping by. I'm Dr. Lanier and I own bewell-forlife.com, and I do these short videos to help as many people as I can in a very, very brief way, and in a way that would encourage you to seek out something like functional medicine, which I represent and which I practice, or integrative medicine, or anything else that might fit in the principles of what I'm presenting and give you a lifetime of good health. Today I'm going to start a series on the values of community. It goes without saying in many ways because we hear it again and again, but we're going to dig into a few of the details of that, and I believe in them strongly. And so let's get started. Several areas, from Psychology Today to Time Magazine to documentaries that have represented the value of strong community, point us in a certain direction. For example, Psychology Today, there was an article that talked about the pillars of social connection. And of course, when you start to talk about things like that in a journal, you do have to define your boundaries. As I was reading about that, it led to other things. The population of Iceland and the Scandinavian countries or Nordic countries are some of the most happy people in the world. And people from where I am in the Southeast United States would go, why? It's so cold there in the winter. But there are certain principles that are there that fit into a long life and a healthy life. They have a strong network of friends. They have a strong sense of freedom. They have a generous community. They have meal sharing regularly. They have contrast in beauty in the whole country, from lush greens to stark black beaches. So it led me to believe some things that are out there that I already knew about. I've talked about the blue zones before because it fascinated me to see the documentary. And so I looked up to see how these correspond, and they match up very closely. In the Blue Zone research, they listed 9 principles of how and why a strong community is important to living 100 years. They move naturally in community. They share a purpose. They downshift regularly. They have an 80% rule. They are plant forward in their food. They drink wine. They belong. And they put loved ones first. And then they live in the right tribe. And we're talking in a series about the strength of community, of belonging, of being together. And we're going to hit 9 points that the blue zones, just as a point of reference, it doesn't mean they're right, it doesn't mean they're wrong, but they make some good points in their Blue Zone documentary and Blue Zone research about what makes a strong community and why that helps people to live longer and healthier, not just longer, but healthier. I'm into that. So the first point that they make is they move naturally. Interesting comment, isn't it? They move naturally. They move as a way of life. They do chores. They garden. They walk with each other. I was watching part of the most recent Blue Zone documentary that was made, where they only narrowed it down, I think, to 5 countries. I don't remember. But there was a group of Chinese ladies, and they were in their 80s and 90s, and they would meet each week or however frequently. I don't want to misquote. But when they met, it showed them walking over hills and whatever, not long distances, but distances to meet every week. First thing you notice is they're naturally active. They are headed to meet with each other. Then they all sat around, and I told my wife in the middle of that particular illustration that these older ladies were sewing. They didn't wear glasses. And they would pick up the thread and a needle and thread that needle with no glasses. Now, that's just making a point to me because you see me wearing glasses. If I took these off, there would be no way I could thread a needle. But that is part of their health. So they're naturally moving people as a way of life. You didn't see any gym memberships in Africa, any gym memberships in these remote places of China where they live to be so old. It's not a necessity that they would go out and create some activity. They had activity together and naturally, squatting down, pulling weeds, doing gardening, It was very obvious that they were not going out of their way to be active. It was their way of life. So for one, we're talking about the beauty of community. Well, these people together walked, gardened, shared. It was just sewing when I watched, but I'm sure they shared cooking and etc. A very valuable just one trait of active living. The second point in what we're doing here from the Blue Zone documentary is they have a shared purpose as a community. A shared purpose. I'm sorry to say in our country right now, in contrast, there is such diversion. There is such angst. There is so many extremes in the U.S. right now. I don't live in other countries. I only know what I hear, so I can't comment on those. But in contrast to that, the beauty of a community would be a shared purpose. I don't mean a club. I mean a shared purpose for life, the principles of life. And that's what this documentary revealed. So let's just say, and it actually falls forward into the other points that we're going to talk about in the near future. And that is that they shared a common purpose for example, being healthy. They shared a common purpose for keeping the garden up. They shared a common purpose for caring for and respecting those that are older and declining. Shared a purpose for helping those giving birth. Shared a purpose for those in need who are sick or ill or hurt or cannot go to work or cannot produce at the moment. They shared a common purpose within themselves. Faith-based. People who, when they sat down, it was assumed that they all were living towards the same thing. 80% rule that we're going to talk about soon. This is something that makes and shapes a community. I mentioned first the extremes in this country right now because it is in stark contrast to this. However, let me encourage you and me. A community is small. You know, in the Bible, in the New Testament, it talked about the people got together and they had all things in common to help each other, to share with each other's needs. So the same thing can happen. In Okinawa, there's small groups of 5. Doesn't take groups of thousands. So similar life purpose, it makes a community. And the third point being they downshift. Interesting word. I love that word. Let me let you think about that for a minute. Downshift. I happen to have a vehicle that has a gear shift, 5 gears. And so to downshift is what happens when you approach a stop sign or traffic and you want to slow down without just applying the brake all the time, and it slows the vehicle down to a lower gear. So downshifting is a part of the communities that seem to have the most 100-year-old people. If you've watched the documentary, as I have, it's impressive to see happy people getting together, sharing time on a regular basis. I'm going to say once a week. For example, on a Saturday night outside the neighborhood, there would be groups of people noted in this documentary that gather together, share food, share dancing, share wine, give themselves permission to play for hours, and get together. So what things can you do when you downshift? Well, in my personal life, because I live in a culture that just makes me push and shove and get to the next place as fast as I can, I actually schedule meditation, times where I get quiet, a quiet time as we call it. So I plan that into my day because I do think, by the way, structure is important to the community as well as just spontaneity and love and laughter and fun. So I do structure that into my life. I think faith is important in our downshifting. So I have faith, and I believe we also have to have permission to play. I think creativity comes from playing. I think nature plays a role in refreshing us and giving us healthy thoughts and healthy life. So we break bread together. We're thankful. We practice that. We build it into our lives and we enjoy it. That would be downshifting. So the fourth rule of community that the Blue Zone people found to be beneficial is the 80% rule. Most cultures do things, and allow for 80% satisfaction. They eat to 80% full. They will not eat to full. They are satisfied with 80%. That translates into several areas. Some people have done research into a 4-day work week versus 5, and not necessarily increasing the hours, and it increases happiness. Thankfulness, mindfulness when we eat. Let's just talk about 80% eating. Although I'm going to make a point of 80% eating, but I want you to understand that in these cultures, they are satisfied with 80% of their production or consumption. But let's talk about it in terms of eating, because then we can translate that into our own lives. 80% rule. Doesn't mean you goof off 20. It doesn't mean you don't try hard on the final 20. It doesn't mean you don't give 100%. 80% of your food. So what we see in these communities is many of them, of course, have to gather their own food in terms of not having the luxuries of Western civilization, not having the abundance, the gluttonous content that we have. So that makes one difference. But I have found that, I don't know if you've ever said grace over your food or been thankful to God for what you have in front of you, but that creates a mindfulness that creates an 80%. The people are thankful for what they have. The people are not greedy for having more. That concept of mindful eating helps indigestion, helps your gratitude, which helps your mind. Think about that. Stop for a moment. Whether you say a prayer, whether you just say a thought. Thank you, God, for these farmers. Thank you for these animals that gave their life. Thank you for the people who picked the produce and packed it and shipped it. I think you get the point. We're going to be now on point 5, I believe it is. And it is that most of the communities that were studied in the Blue Zone were plant forward. Doesn't mean they didn't eat meat, but they were plant forward. I encourage you to watch the Blue Zone documentary, by the way. As you watch the Blue Zone documentary, what you see is that each community eats differently. It's a cultural setting. So it doesn't mean that if we ate Chinese food more, we would live long like the Chinese. It doesn't mean that if we eat African bush people's food, we would live long as they do. It doesn't mean that in Sardinia, that if we ate more pasta, wine, and tomato sauce, we would live longer. Each culture has their own food. Not one of them would necessarily make any of us live longer if we didn't practice any of the other principles. But they live and eat clean food. So, as we talk about plant forward, there are extremes, and I'm well aware of them. My patients ask me this all the time. All the way from vegan to carnivore. Somebody who eats meat only, somebody who eats vegetables only. Those are extremes, and I'm not so sure that those are intended to be a lifetime practice unless you happen to live where you're out of meat, or unless you live somewhere where you're out of plants, etc. So those are extreme settings, and those are extreme diets. This is not the place and time to go into that. But what they discovered from these blue zones, and what many people who do research into food have discovered, is that a plant-forward diet is good. Meaning what? Meaning mostly vegetables. If you look at a plate, the plate would probably be about 60% vegetables, 40% some kind of protein, meat protein. And so it's a smaller protein than we're used to. It's less than a Big Mac and some fries. It's more plants than it is potatoes. And so they eat a plant-forward diet. Let's just say 2 things before I finish. If we were in an agrarian society versus a sedentary society, Western civilization is sedentary. The days of manufacturing almost went away completely, and now they're coming back a little bit. Having a farm is almost extinct, except for big food industry. And so our food practices and eating practices have adapted. So that's a factor. But let's just say plant forward helps in these communities to live longer and healthier. There. I hope that you understood that. That is not winning any argument or proving anything. It's just a principle. So today is our 6th point. And out of the 9 points, the 6th point that the Blue Zone recognized as one of the strengths of the community was that people in community whined. not W-H-I-N-E-D, but W-I-N-E-D. And that was just an observation. I'm not necessarily telling you to whine. I'm not necessarily telling you to drink if you have other preferences. But I'm telling you that was one of the things that was pointed out in the documentary that the community enjoyed. Now, having said that, I'll present to you how that plays out. First of all, they make a point of it and to say that wine by itself is not the health crutch. It fits in with the entire other 9 principles of community, as does every other principle. Not any one principle of the 9 makes you live healthier and longer. It is something that fits in with the others. So, for example, as part of the support that they offer, in the European Society of Cardiology, they make a point to the 80% rule, the moderation of wine. They also make a point to say that in the European continent, more often than not, wine is done just as a matter of eating together. So when wine is used as part of the community, to eat together, to de-stress, to unwind, to get rid of some of the health crippling sense of living out the daily life, the community serves that purpose. Like a glass, let's just say a glass of wine would serve, the community serves that purpose. A time to talk, a time to communicate, a time to unwind. Even in some studies on cognitive decline, they decided that one glass of wine a week, at least one glass of wine a week, was contributing to clearer mindedness. Now, as I said, this is not to justify wine drinking or to accelerate it in any way. It's a principle. Put it together with other principles and join together to be healthy. And let's see, we're on the 7th one. And the 7th principle of living longer in community and the value of that is belonging. Belonging. Attending faith-based church services adds 4 to 14 years to your life. Just making a point of belonging. I think if you've lived anywhere and worked with a certain group of people long enough, you probably feel like you belong. I certainly do. I treasure people that work with me for a number of years because they know me almost as well as my family knows me. It creates a sense of I belong, they belong. Let's go down a short list of what belonging might look like. You tell me, you stop and think about it a minute. Belonging, a sense of community, meaning you can show up and there's at least less judgment. I think even in a family, brothers and sisters tend to judge and there's criticism here and there, but the rub, there's a proverb that says, as iron sharpens iron, so one friend sharpens another. There's a sense that rub is not to be avoided 100%, but there's a safety. You're somewhere where you know that you are loved. You know that if you do sharpen each other with a rub, it doesn't mean that it's over. It means that you're in a community and you can sharpen each other, iron against iron, and still exist. That's what we all want. We want to be known and still accepted, right? So, belonging, having that sense. As you watch the documentary, and I use it as a point of reference because that's where these principles come from. You notice these people getting together regularly, whatever it's once a week or whether it's once a month or whether it's at events or weddings or funerals. They get together, they know each other, they are groups that are familiar with each other, and they have permission to play. They have permission to enjoy the time that they have together and then get back to work. That's what belonging is. No one's judging you for sitting around. No one's judging you as you have a glass of wine. No one's judging you for not being out there sweating till the sun goes down, etc. You belong to this group. So anyway, that's another principle of why and how you can benefit from a community. We're on number 8, and it's called Loved Ones First. I think it almost goes without saying in terms of what that means, but let's talk about that. Putting loved ones first in a community means that if you're in that community, are you a loved one? If you're in the community, you will be. Doesn't mean that it has to be blood relative to be a loved one. Doesn't mean that you have to wear the same clothes to be a loved one, or the same uniform, or live on the same street. But you put your loved ones first. Whoever that is that you love, you're putting them first. That's a very good thing and a very strong reason to be in a community. You will be loved ahead of those who are not in community. And that provides you a safe place, a place of strength. Life partners add 3 years to your life. Being a life partner adds 3 years to your life. Being in a strong community for a long length of time lengthens your health and your life. Investing in your family takes time, and it also translates to investing in yourself. When you only invest in yourself and not in others, then you're losing. Then you are not getting the interest. You're not accruing anything that's going to make you grow and be healthier in that part of your life. Again, all of these principles relate to each other. So as a part of putting your family first, that will not make you live longer any more than any one of these others separated. So putting that together and putting loved ones first, for example, many times when I was younger in business, I would be invited to go have a drink. And that would be supposedly a time to increase my business, meet people I don't know. Well, I had a wife and 2 kids at home, and I am not perfect, but I wanted to be home with my wife and kids, and I could not justify spending more time doing my business than being with them. And I would put them first, and I think they know that and they appreciate that. And same thing my wife has done, and our kids are growing up and they put their families first. I think that's a benefit. We've been talking about community as part of a health-conscious choice that we all make. And the 9th point out of 9 from the Blue Zone documentary that I use just as a format is the right tribe. Now, right tribe sounds a little elitist, I must say, as I was looking at it, being in the right tribe. Some people are not born in the right tribe, right? So I had to understand that. I had to settle into that. Well, the point of being in the right tribe is this, or should I say it is analogous to this. Did you know that studies show that smoking, obesity, happiness, loneliness, joy are contagious? I did not even know that either. So being in the right tribe means choosing your community and therefore benefiting from it, but choosing it wise enough to where what is in that would benefit you. That doesn't mean you're selfish, but it means you're wise. You enter a situation with certain predispositions, let's say. Possibly it's faith-based. Possibly it's a creative-based group. I happen to believe that being in a community where you're free to do creativity and art is extremely valuable. So being in the right tribe to do that is important. Or being in a tribe that offers that diversity so that you feel like you're not going to be stuck or forced into a certain way or a certain way of being that you really are contrary to. So being in the right tribe, possibly born, but we all know that plenty of people are not born in the right tribe. But the right tribe always has certain characteristics, always has certain characteristics that reflect all these other 9 principles about binding and being welcomed and being 80%ers and being shared burdens. We can share each other's burdens. We can lighten up. We can play. That's being in the right tribe. Has less to do with the tribe you're born into. Has more to do with your tribe that you choose. Functional medicine is something that brings all factors in together to help you live to be healthy. If I can ever be of any help, let me know. We're trying to make a good community ourselves. When we talk about community can be a little intimidating, just as much as it can be a little fulfilling, just as much as it can be extremely fulfilling. To be a part of a group, a part of some people, as described in the 9 principles. But I presume that the reason you're here and you're listening is because you're searching for answers. Let's be honest, we all are searching We all want to be in the right tribe. We all want to benefit from other people. But sometimes that can be, from the outside looking in, a little intimidating. So a community, you may already have a community, and you just need to make the best use of that community. You may need to expand your community. You may just need some help understanding how that happens socially, psychologically, mentally, how you end up there. Because you may be outside right now. You may be a little stuck. I've been there before. So I just wanted to say, when we talk about community, I want you to understand that that community may already exist for you in the smallest way, and I would tap into that. You may have a friend that listens to you, understands you. You may need one friend, and that friend may just be within reach. Don't neglect that. That would be something that would begin the ball rolling toward good health. And remember, community is one principle of good health and longevity. It doesn't mean you have lost if you don't have that community right now, but it does mean that it's one thing you could, should, would pursue in the future from now on. Like I've said before, when's the best time to plant a tree if you want shade? Well, 10 years ago. But when's the next best time? Today. It's time today to make a difference. It's time today to decide to see what you can do to be healthier. That's why I say what I say. That's why I present factual situations and information. I want to encourage you. If you need somebody to help you get unstuck, maybe you're physically sick and it's difficult to see yourself in a community. I understand. I completely understand. And that is a hurdle to that. Let me help you with that. Let me see if I can get some of the pieces of the puzzle fit together so that you are healthier and you're ready to be part of a community again. Thought I'd add that into this communication known community. Thanks again for stopping by. Stay tuned.